Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on another amazing episode of Finding the Superpowers Within. I am your host, Dr. April J. Lisbon, your workplace autism advocate. I am super excited today to have today's guest. I have known Dr. Shawn Anthony Robinson for almost 6 years now, and I will tell you that not only is he a brilliant scholar, he's a brilliant advocate, brilliant husband, brilliant father. There's so much I could tell you about Shawn, but I will let Shawn introduce himself just a little bit and share with you who he is and what he's all about. So, ladies and gentlemen, please listen up, get your videos together, and let's welcome Dr. Shawn Anthony Robinson. Shawn, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on here. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for joining in. So as I said before in my intro, can you share with my listening and my viewing audience a little bit about who you are and the work that you do?
Yes, so I'm a big advocate in the space of dyslexia, or particularly kids with learning disabilities. My journey in life experiences have kind of molded me into who I am today, given the fact that I have dyslexia and wasn't diagnosed until I was 18 and graduated high school at an elementary level. So I think all my experiences, God, willing, have prepared me for this work of being an advocate. More importantly, a husband, a father, a community member. And so even as a researcher in terms of the work I do within the academy, I had to think about how to reach communities and families who are not reading journal articles or book chapters that are mostly for people in the academy. So that is where, the whole theme of the kid book that my wife and I wrote, Doctor Dyslexia Dude. And so I think just going back to my own childhood experiences, I wish I would have had books that were culturally relevant to me as a young African-American boy, but particularly a young boy who had a learning disability, that I could relate and see something that was powerful within the context of a kid's book. And so, again, I don't want to ramble on. I just think that my experiences have really shaped who I am today.
Absolutely. And Shawn, you mentioned something very interesting to me. You indicated that you were not diagnosed until age 18. So that's like right around high school, ready to graduate.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your educational experience and why did it take so long for you to be diagnosed at the age of 18?
I can't say, why. I only can make, hypotheses or assumptions. But I was in special ed pretty much all the way from pre-K all the way up through high school. Went to an alternative high school for 2 years. I got kicked out of the regular high school because I couldn't control my anger. But I had some beautiful teachers. Like I thank God every day for these teachers I had that really helped me see my own power within me. But the whole learning aspect, particularly reading, was never caught. I just kind of got funneled through the system, which we see today with a lot of kids who get pushed through, who graduate, but are really not reading at grade level when they get out. And so what do you have to live for when you are 18? You get sent out into the world, where you have to navigate a system that's full of print. Everything we do is print. We read, we write, we speak. And if you struggle with those areas, you're going to have a hard time. And so I was fortunate enough to have a professor that saw my talent that my mom found, and he diagnosed me and said that I was one of the most illiterate kids he's ever seen, and said it wasn't my fault that the system had failed me, and it wasn't it was okay to feel the way I felt, and that he was going to help me, but it was going to take a lot of work. So he accepted me into his remedial college program, and 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I was off to college, and I never stopped school. So I went to school pretty much 18 years straight after high school.
Wow, that is such a testimony. It's such a story of hope. It's such a story of perseverance and determination to find out exactly, what goes beyond just the IEP, So thank you so much for sharing your truth with us. So you shared a little bit about your school journey. Can you tell us a little bit about how your dyslexia manifests itself at work?
I think everyone, has different ways of coping. I also think that people have uh, different strengths and weaknesses, and so I try not to give advice of how somebody else should experience or what they should do. For myself, I always found job coaches, I guess, or mentors that helped me kind of navigate spaces that were not my strength. Particularly when I first started off doing like writing, emails, like my writing was awful. So I had people look at it before I sent it off to make sure that it was correct. And, so I just think that being on the workforce, some things can seem terrifying for people. I know for myself when I first started off, but then as I found life coaches, job coaches, mentors who, built confidence in me, then those areas that I seemed to be fearful of became a blessing to me. And then I realized that it was a way to tackle it and turn it into a strength versus looking at it as a weakness.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that information. So, as we're to do something a little bit lighter, can you tell us one or two things you would tell your younger self about this journey that you've been on over the years?
I think endurance.
Mm.
Never giving up. That the road's never going to be straight. So it's going to be some sort of trials and tribulations, and that sometimes it's going to be a dark and lonely place, but you just got to, keep believing in yourself, like that little train, choo choo, choo choo choo. So I just think it's just comes down to a mentality of really understanding that you can do it versus people telling what you can't do. And I think, for myself, being younger, looking back, there were people who would tell me I can't do it. And so I think that played an impact of how I saw myself and how I took things on. I took it from a point where I didn't believe I could do it because I heard it so many times that I became, I lived it, I walked it. But then once people start telling me I could do it and I learned to read, I just became a sponge. So I think tell my, to even tell like my two boys or kids I work with, you just gotta keep believing in yourself. You gotta just keep working hard. You gotta dig deep. You gotta always have hope, and endurance, and so life is never gonna be easy, but you just gotta keep working hard.
Absolutely.
Hope that was helpful.
Yes, very helpful, because now it's going to run as an amazing segue to my next question.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about, as I call it, manifesting and speaking affirmations into any child, but especially a child with dyslexia, how can parents support their child? How can they reaffirm them, regardless of what is being said, the negative words that they may hear? How can parents, kind of sort of like flip the script to support their child?
I just think that, it's anything in life, when you have a garden or you have flowers, you got to nurture it, right? You got to be patient with it. It takes time to grow. I think a lot of times for myself speaking, sometimes, I might lose a little patience, and that's just human nature. Like that's just part of life. And so I think being in that situation, I think patience and love are probably the two biggest factors, because we don't know when that light's gonna click for our child. We don't know when they're gonna, have the aha moment and, just take off and start soaring like an eagle. We don't know. It could be 3 days, it could be 5 days, it could be a month, it could be a year, it could be two. So I just think patience and love and just encouraging them to keep doing it regardless of, how they feel, and really celebrate small milestones. So, if they made a small accomplishment, celebrate it, because it's, every milestone will get you to the end goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So on the flip side, another flip side, I have so many flip sides. These two are two new questions. that I've recently started asking my millennials and Gen Zs, because as I tell people, I truly believe that you guys are the change agents. That's going to really revamp and revise how we see the workforce, how we see education, how we see change as we know it. So for you, and this is specifically for you, what types of accommodations can your employer provide you in order for you to be successful on the job, as well as how can your colleagues support you on the job?
I think for writing purposes, because I'm trying to think of like different situations, scenarios, and this question has really got me. uh, I think for me, for writing would be the one. It's really my thoughts that are coming into my head are not always reflected on the paper, and so sometimes I have to have somebody look over that before I send it out. But I don't always use people within the space I work at, because I don't know if people will judge me for it. So I always use somebody outside of my space because I feel more comfortable than asking somebody within my space. Because within my space, you don't know what kind of judgmental attitudes they'll have for me. They might think that I'm less than, or I'm not competent in certain areas. So I always like to go outside of my space so I can get the services or support that I need versus internal. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. And I think once again, that goes back to, how we accept and embrace individuals with unique learning needs, and how are we actually providing accommodations appropriately to support the needs of individuals. A lot of that should be done in-house, but because we still have these stigmas as related to unique learners with disabilities, it can become challenging to want to get support in-house. So I understand that totally. And I'm hoping, that more of our disability advocates and our disability attorneys, listen to what you just shared so that we can become more vocal about this, because I'm sure you're not the only person that is experiencing this or who feels this way. And we really need to start embracing the people who we hire, their unique skills, everything that they bring to the table, while still providing them with the appropriate accommodations.
Yes.
I always tell people, once a student graduates from high school or completes school, disability doesn't go away. It's still there, and those accommodations are lifelong accommodations. And we have to, I'm going to say it politically correct today, we have to get off of our butts and do what's right by people. That's just what we have to do.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that. So our last question, because I heard the babies and I love them.
Oh.
Yeah. So the last question is this. Where do you see yourself 3 to 6 months from now after doing this interview?
Doing the work that needs to be done, advocacy work. My wife and I are going to start working on books 3 and 4. Thank you for Doctor Dyslexia Dude. I'm working on some other things in reference to it. So I just want to try to get my work more mainstreamed, for students with dyslexia. Don't know what it looks like or what time frame, but I just know that something big's coming. So I just gotta be patient.
I love it. And so if people wanted to connect with you via social media or learn more about Dr. Dyslexia Dude, how can they connect with you?
They can just go to our website, drdyslexiadude.com, or they can go to our Instagram account, which is just Dr. Dyslexia Dude, and they can learn, about the book and about what we're doing.
Wonderful. So, Dr. Shawn Anthony Robinson, I want to tell you, thank you so much for joining me today. The information that you have shared, I know will benefit not only individuals with dyslexia, but also individuals who are advocates, individuals who are allies, or individuals who just want to know more about how to support the needs of individuals with dyslexia. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Dr. April J. Lisbon, and this has been another amazing episode of Finding the Superpowers Within. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Have a great and wonderful day.